Hello, dear students. How are you today? I hope you are staying safe at home. Let us explain and explore the essay which is presented on the screen. The title of this essay is How Do You Say? As you see here, the title is capitalized. Several words of the title are capitalized. How do you say? What kind of essay is this? This is the question. It is a narrative essay. In this kind of essay, the writer communicates his feelings, impressions through narration, through telling a story. And here, the writer tells a story of a language problem he experienced in Japan. Even though the narrative essay has the same basic form as most in the academic essays, as most other academic essays. It allows the writer to be more creative than academic essays usually do. And as you know, dear students, there are several elements that make up a story. These elements are setting, theme, mood, characters, plot. What's meant by setting? Setting is the location when the action in a story takes place. What's meant by theme? Theme is the basic idea of the story, the central idea of the story. Mood, the feeling and atmosphere that the writer creates for the story. Characters, the people in the story, persons in the story. Plot means what happens in the story, the sequence of events. The plot includes a climax or turning point. As you know, in academic writing, the essay consists of 5 paragraphs or more. And in this essay, narrative essay, it has 7 paragraphs. Regardless of the length of the essay, it should consist of an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Let's start with the introduction here. What would happen if you woke up one day and suddenly found yourself in a world where you could not communicate with anyone? I am an English language teacher. In June 2004, I accepted a job in a rural area of Japan called Niigata and found myself faced with this language problem. One event in particular stands out as an example of my inability to express my ideas to the people around me due to my lack of vocabulary. This is an introduction. And as you see here, the introduction of a narrative essay is a paragraph, the paragraph that begins your story. In the introduction, you describe the setting, introduces the characters, and prepare your audience for the action to come. Of course, The introduction should have a hook and a thesis statement. You see here, the hook is the opening sentences in the introductory paragraph. Look at the first sentence, the opening sentence. Its function is to attract and to grab the attention of readers and make him read a whole essay. The first sentence, as you see here, what would happen if you woke up one day and suddenly found yourself in a world where you could not communicate with anyone? This is the hook. This is the first sentence that grab the reader's attention. And the hook is especially important in the narrative essay because it helps set the stage for the story. The hook make readers start guessing about what will happen next. And then the thesis at the end of the introduction here. The thesis and most types of essays states the main idea of the essay and tell what the organization of the information will be. However, in a narrative essay, the thesis introduces the action that begins in the first paragraph of the essay. The thesis statement do not tell the reader what happens. It only introduces the action that will follow. Look again at the introductory paragraph and you see here what if conditional type, conditional sentences by using if. And this, when I say what would happen are, if you were late, this is conditional type 2. And this type of condition type 2 is used to express improbable condition. When I say if if he studied hard, he would succeed. And if a clause, we use past simple, and in the many clause we use on the model would and then infinitive without to. When or if the sentence expresses a fact, we can see conditional type zero conditional. When I say if water boils, it changes into vapor, into steam. We don't use we use here with if clause present tense and in the main clause present tense without using a model verb. But when we use in the if clause past perfect, when I say if you had studied hard, in the main clause you can say you would have succeeded. And this type of clause, this type of condition is used to express impossible condition. Impossible. I hope you understand this condition types. One, two, three, and zero conditional. Look at the last sentence here. Due to. Due to means because of. I can say he was punished due to his laziness. Due to is followed by a noun here. But when I say he was punished because without off because he was lazy. He was punished because he was lazy. Okay, let's move to the body of the paragraph. The body of a narrative essay contain most of the plot. The action in the plot can be organized in many different ways. One way is a chronological or time order. In this method, each paragraph gives more information about the story as it proceeds in time. The first paragraph usually describes the first event. The second paragraph describes the second, and so on. In this essay, in an essay with chronological organization, ends paragraph, each paragraph, and or ends with a transitional sentence. Transitional sentences have two purposes. The first purpose is to signal the end of the action in one paragraph, and the second purpose is to provide a link to the action of the next paragraph. These sentences are vital, very important, because they give your story unity and allow the reader to follow the action easily. As you see here in the body paragraph number one, I had been in Japan only a few days and I was feeling restless. I wanted to make some fresh bread. So I set out for the store with the seemingly simple intention of buying some flour. I had taken some Japanese language classes before I arrived in Japan. Although I knew my Japanese skills were limited, my lack of knowledge did not stop me from going to the store to buy flour. I thought that I would locate the section when the grains when the grains were displayed and find the bag that had a picture of either bread or flour on it. This is the first paragraph of the body of this essay, of narrative essay. The next one, the small town when I lived had only one tiny store. I wandered around the store a few times, but I didn't see a bag of anything that appeared to be flour. In the United States, flour usually comes in a paper bag with pictures of biscuits or bread on it. So this is what I was looking for. I finally found a few clear plastic bags that had the bread crumbs inside. So I thought that flour might be located nearby. No matter how many bags I examined, I could not find any flour. The next paragraph, I desperately wanted to ask one of the three elderly women clerks where the flour was, but I couldn't do this simple task. I knew how to ask where something was, but I didn't know I didn't know the word for flower. I tried to think of how to say flower using different words such as white powder or the ingredients that will use to make bread. But I didn't know powder and I didn't know ingredients. Just then, I saw one of my students in the parking lot. I rushed outside to his car and explained that I needed to know a word in Japanese. How do you say flower? I asked. He quickly replied, that's easy. He then told me the word was Hana. The next paragraph, I rushed back into the store, which was about to close for the evening. I found one of the elderly clerks and asked in my best Japanese, Hana, or excuse me, where is the Hana? The petite old woman said something in Japanese and raced to the far right side of the store. Finally, I thought, I am going to get my flour and go home to make bread. However, my hopes ended rather quickly when I followed the clerk to the produce section. I saw green onions, tomatoes, and even pumpkins, but I couldn't understand why flour would be there. The woman then pointed to the beautiful yellow chrysanthemums next to the green onions. The next paragraph here. At first, I was puzzled, but suddenly it all made sense. I had been in the country long enough to know that people in Japan eat chrysanthemums in salads. I was standing in front of the flower display, not the flower display, when I asked my student for the Japanese word for flower, I didn't specify whether I mean flower or flower because it had never occurred to me that grocery stores, especially small ones, might sell flowers. These are the body paragraphs. And the last paragraph is the concluding paragraph. In the concluding paragraph, the essay needs to have a concluding ideas. In the conclusion, you finish describing the action in the essay. And the final sentences have two functions here. The first function, it can deliver the moral of the story by telling the reader what the characters learned from the experience. And the second function, it can make a prediction or a revelation about future action that will happen as a result of the event in the story. Okay, dear students, as you see here, this narrative essay consists of 7 paragraphs. The introductory paragraph and body paragraph number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and the concluding paragraph. Uh, Let us read the concluding paragraph. I didn't buy any chrysanthemums that night. I was not able to find the flower either. My lack of knowledge about Japanese cuisine, and my very limited knowledge of the Japanese language caused me to go home empty handed that night. However, I learned the often underestimated value of simple vocabulary in speaking a second language. For me, this event in a small store in rural Japan opened my eyes to my lack of vocabulary skills. And this concluding sentence can make a revelation, disclosure of something that was not known before about future action that will happen as a result of an event or as a result of the event in the story. With this, ladies and gentlemen, dear students, we come to the end of this lecture. I wish you all the best. Thank you.